Yes, as we are waiting for our high table to take their seats, I just wanted to give you an overview of our program. I know you have it with you, just to be sure. The guest of honor has already arrived, so he's here with us. And the arrival of the guest of honor means we are already in the mood of starting our event. And then when they come here, we will start with the introductory remarks, which will be given by the DVC research from the University of Dar es Salaam. And these will be followed by welcoming remarks. And this one will be given by the Vice Chancellor of the University of Dar es Salaam, which will also means inviting the guest of honor to come and give the speech and launch the book. Of course, we have, after the launching of the book, basically after the speech of the guest of honor, we'll also have the discussants. We'll discuss the book. We'll have a discussion on the book itself. And we'll start with Dr. Matthew Buki, and will be followed by Professor Emeritus Chris Peter Minor. And thereafter, we shall have an overview of the book, which will be given by Professor Stefano Ponte and Professor Christine Noe. We'll also have the opportunity to hear from the contributing authors. And in this case, we shall have Pils Livano taking us briefly in 5 minutes, just some highlights on what are the key messages as far as the thematic area on forest is concerned. And then Dr. Ruth John will tell us key issues on wildlife. Dr. Faraja Namkesa will speak about the fisheries just in 5 minutes each. And then we'll have the Q&A session where some comments, questions will be raised from the audience, and of course will be responded by the respective authors. And before the votes of thanks, we shall have the children's book event. We'll have a few words about children's books. We have publishers and books sellers who are here with us. They'll have a session on children's book. The books are outside there, but they'll say something about how you can get the books. And Professor Dan Bronkiton will say a few words on that, hardly in 5 minutes. And thereafter, we shall have the vote of thanks from Professor Christine Noe, the principal of the College of Social Sciences, where the project which led to the book that we're going to launch today was hosted. And finally, we shall have a group photo right in here, and we will end our session or our event with refreshments and networking. And of course, while doing that, we can also visit the book stores outside. I think that tells how brief this session is supposed to be. And with that, I think in a few minutes we are going to start as soon as the guests of honor and the members of the high table joins us here in a short while. Thank you. friends who have just come in, if you don't mind coming down here, because you are sitting behind even the media, we want to also want you to be part of us. If you don't mind coming down here, there are plenty of seats. So I'm told our guest of honor and the entire high table is about to join us. And as part of our usual gesture, can we stand up and welcome them as they come? Thank you very much. You can have your seats. Our guest of honor, Dr. Ken Hosea, the Director of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. Professor Bonaventure Rutinwa, the Acting Vice Chancellor, University of Dar es Salaam. Professor Nelson Boniface, the Acting DVC Research. Professor Christine Noe, the Principal of the College of Social Sciences, but also the editor, or one of the editors of the book. Professor Stefano Ponti and Professor Dan Bronkington, the two editors of the book. Professors and other faculty members from the University of Dar es Salaam and other higher education institutions invited here. Students and invited guests, good afternoon. I'm pleased and very much honored to have everybody in here waiting for a very special event in the academia today, launching of a book titled Contested Sustainability, the Political Ecology of Conservation and Development in Tanzania. Our guest of honor, we feel so much honored and humbled by your presence, and we are looking forward to hearing from you, especially launching this book this evening. Now, for the interest of time, I'll go straight into the program where I want to invite the DVC research Professor Boniface to come and give us the introductory remarks, and thereby inviting the Vice Chancellor to come and also share his remarks before inviting the guest of honor. Karibu sana, Prof.
Guest of honor, Dr. Kennedy Hosea, Director of Higher Education, Minister of Education, Science and Technology, Vice Chancellor, the acting one, Professor Bonaventure Rutinwa, also the DVC academic of the University of Dar es Salaam, editors of the book entitled Contested Sustainability, the Political Ecology and Conservation and Development in Tanzania, Professors Ponte from Copenhagen Business School, Professor Noe from the University of Dar es Salaam, also the Principal of the College in the Social Sciences, Professor Dan Brockington from the University of Barcelona, contributors of the book, all participants. I'm informed about the presence of the DUP Manager, Dar es Salaam University Press, Dr. Amani. All invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm delighted to take this part And before I work on the requested event, I would like to give some few remarks before I invite you, Vice Chancellor, to invite the guest of honor. As the DVC dealing with research, I'm delighted to be part of this event. And when I was asked to participate, I had to first understand what was this project about. I was informed that, Vice Chancellor, guest of honor, this project started in 2016, and it is having a lot of outputs, one of which is this book, which is to be launched today. Some of the outputs, guest of honor, includes the PhD graduates. I'm informed about 3 candidates who have graduated from this project. And I'm informed about one of them being Dr. Pili Silvano. If they are there, they can stand, please. Okay, thank you. And Dr. Faraja Namkesa. Dr. Rutu John. Okay. Guest of honor, if you look closely, you'll see all of them are female, and the 2 of them are from the University of Dar es Salaam. I think the Vice Chancellor, DVC academic, will be delighted to see that the academic staff at the University of Dar es Salaam is expanding, and they're giving priority to female as staff. Guest of honor, I'm also informed about the postdoc output, 2 of them. One from the University of Dar es Salaam, Elikana Kalumanga. I don't know if he's here. Also Fadhili Balagili from St. John University in Dodoma. And as you recall, the policy of the University of Dar es Salaam Vice Chancellor is to make the university work with other institutions, including private sectors and other institutions. So you see this project also aligns well with the policy of the University of Dar es Salaam, taking the university to work with the other institutions. A guest of honor, about this book and about the editors from outside, I was also delighted to learn that the dissemination of the output of this project is in line with the policy on scholarly dissemination and the publications of the University of Dar es Salaam, of which we guide our scholars to send their books, journals, journal articles to highly reputable outlets. This has been actually taken into consideration. I saw the communication from Professor Stefano, who instructed all the authors to consider the list of the funder, and it was communicated that the dissemination should consider this list. After my search, I found this list actually is from highly reputable international outlets, which includes Elsevier, Springer, Wille, and the journals at the University of Dar es Salaam, which are now to be coordinated under DUP. These are actually reputable outlets. So from the office that deals with research at the University of Dar es Salaam, I'm happy to see that this project actually is in line with our policies at the University of Dar es Salaam. Congratulations. Without taking too much time, guest of honor, I would like to ask the Vice Chancellor now to welcome the guest of honor to give his speech. Thank you so much for paying attention to my remarks. Thank you.
Our guest of honor, Dr. Ken Osea, the Director for Higher Education in the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Professor Nelson Boniface, professors and colleagues from within the university, editors of the book, Professor Stefano Ponte from Copenhagen Business School, Professor Christine Noe, University of Dar es Salaam, Professor Dan Brockington, Autonomous University of Barcelona, contributors and discussants, Professor Emeritus Chris Peter Maina, nice to see you, my brother. Dr. Matthew Buki, University of Dodoma, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to extend to you a very warm welcome to the University of Dar es Salaam and to convey gratitude to everybody for accepting our invitation to attend this very important event of book launch. Special thanks to our guest of honor, the Director of Higher Education, for accepting our invitation at very short notice, I must admit, to come to the launch, to officiate the launch of this book. Your presence here, despite your very tight schedule, in particular today, is a sign of your dedication to work and to the University of Dar es Salaam. I wish to convey our thanks to guests who have traveled from elsewhere in the country and abroad. Let me recognize the presence of our research collaborators from Denmark, Copenhagen Business School, and University of Roskilde, United Kingdom, University of Sheffield, and Spain, the Autonomous University of Barcelona and ESADE Business School, as well as Italy, University of Rome, Tre. We value your partnership as we broaden our network for mutual support for research, student supervision, joint publication, and dissemination, which are the key functions of our university. Ladies and gentlemen, the event we are witnessing today makes me very happy because it is an indication of our relevance as a university. The book we are launching today, titled Contested Sustainability, the Political Ecology of Conservation, is a result of efforts of many individuals and institutions. It's a mark of collaborative research because it has included researchers from universities in Tanzania and their counterparts in other countries, and from different disciplines. Collaborative research is something that our research policy has emphasized. Honorable guest of honor, the book you launched today marks the end of a very successful 5-year Danida-funded project on new conservation partnerships for sustainability, or NEPSUS. In the course of this research, our researchers worked in 3 districts, which include Rufiji, Kirwa, and Mtwara Rural. The most important output of this project is 4 policy briefs that were discussed widely by national stakeholders in different workshops here at the University of Dar es Salaam. We are glad to provide you these policy briefs for each sector and one for the overall natural resource governance. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, a book launch is an important part of a research dissemination. You'll agree with me that we need to put as much energy into dissemination of publications as much as we do to research activities. Many books have been. This event reminds us all of the responsibility to blow the trumpet about our own publications. I therefore congratulate the editors for this initiative. In the same vein, I commend all researchers and contributors of this volume. Ladies and gentlemen, with these few remarks, I now humbly request our guest of honor, Honorable Dr. Kenneth Osea, to launch the book and take the podium to deliver the speech which will mark the opening of the book's discussion. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Mkurugenzi, karibu.
The acting Vice Chancellor of University of Dar es Salaam, Professor Rutinwa, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Professor Nelson Boniface, other University of Dar es Salaam directors, heads of departments, protocol observed, professors and colleagues from Denmark and outside the country, particularly Professor Stefano Ponti, Professor Dan Brockingham, academic staff of the University of Dar es Salaam that are present here, professors, I see some that I recognize, and other university leadership, students, postgraduate students, postgraduate students, yes, you are there, assistant lecturers and other University of Dar es Salaam, media team, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all in the name, kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano. Can you say, kazi iendelee? Thank you very much. Now, before I read the official speech, I wanted to spend a little bit of time doing three things. Number one, telling the audience about a little bit of what we do in the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology relating to this event. Number two and three, I'm going to congratulate three different groups of people. And then after that, I'm going to read the official opening speech. Number one, about the ministry. Now, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, we oversee about 30 universities. Out of these, 14 are public universities. And our student body now, degree students across the country is around 240,000. It's a little bit lower than the neighboring countries, but the higher education, we are making progress, 240,000 students. And in the last admission cycle, 78 higher education institutions in the country admitted degree students. So the ministry is charged with overseeing policy level, but the universities pretty much take care of the rest of the day-to-day running of the universities through their senates and their councils. Now, of that long list that I just mentioned, I just outlined, the University of Dar es Salaam has been our top university in the country for many, like 30 years that I've been also following it up. And so with that, can you clap for University of Dar es Salaam? Now, thank you very much. Now we have this, what is called webometric ranking. Now, the University of Dar es Salaam, in 2006 and 7, while I was already a lecturer at this university, University of Dar es Salaam was ranked 7th in the whole of Africa, 7th, 8th, 2007. That was quite an achievement. Our Vice Chancellor around that time, Professor Luhanga, used to had this phrase saying, University of Dar es Salaam is the best university north of Limpopo and south of Sahara. Unfortunately, the ranking has dropped. So the ranking has dropped considerably, whereas University of Dar es Salaam continues to be the top university in the country. The ranking has gone down compared to our colleagues in Kenya, Uganda. So we have really... Now, my next congratulations now, Professor Christine Noe. I hope I've got the name correct. What you have done today, you are helping us towards raising the ranking of the University of Dar es Salaam. Please, can you stand and receive a round of applause? So what you have done today, you are helping us to again prop up. This is because the ranking, the university league tables as they are called, usually because there are so many universities across the continent, they cannot visit each university. So what they do a webometric. They look at the the website of each university and see what is there. So today's product, should it go up there, or so maybe it's already there, would help us towards that end. Now, congratulations to Professor Noe. I happen to have been around for quite a long time. When I was undergrad, the University of Dar es Salaam had giants. I'm going to now to use this phrase, the cradle of academic activity. University of Dar es Salaam was a known cradle of academic discourse, if I may use that, or intellectual discourse. And when we started our undergrad, we just missed the wave of giants of what I just said, like Professor Rodney, Walter Rodney, and the others, but we were told that these were here at this university. So when we arrived, as undergrads, we found a new wave of intellectual giants. I'm pleased to recognize Professor Issa Shivji, many other, Professor Kezi Lahabi, which we already knew when we were in secondary school, Professor Pius Yanda, and I see, if you can even raise your hand, Professor Chris Peter. Yes, can we give him a round of applause? And I'm going to tell a story. But let me also recognize Professor Fred Kaijage, who's, I think, next to you. Please, can you put up your hand? Thank you very much. Mungu wabariki. I still, good to see you again today. And now, these were now the giants. And I'm going to tell Professor Noe just one incident so that it can help you as you go ahead. Because you are now, this was the generation, and then now you are the following generation, and I see some young people who are going to be the next generation in doing what you are doing today. Now, when Professor, there was one, I think it was an event here at UDSM. I can't remember exactly what it was, but all these retired professors brought along their work. I'm going to repeat again. All these retired giants of, intellectual discourse brought their work. And Professor Shivji was standing. In front of him, there was a table. And this table was full of books, edited and written by him and his colleagues. There were a pile of books. Professor Noe, I want you to go home today with that image. You are still young. Huh? You are still young. Mungu akusaidie, so that you can also, at some point in the future, I think we will all, people like us will be long gone, you can also stand back and there's a table in front of you with a pile of books that you have edited. Best wishes in that. Now, for the young people, once again, PhD students, if you are there, and master students, and the undergrads, if you are there, she is now our hero. Just like when I was looking at Professor Peter and Professor Fred Kaijage, Professor Shivji, there are many who were really role models when I was undergrad. Now you are looking at her as a role model. You are looking at her as a role model. You are copying her. I remember I used to copy what Professor Peter was, even the kind of shoes I would look to see what kind of shoes this professor wearing. And I would also copy, because when people who are giants in front of you, you look at what kind of shirts when they go to Europe are buying. And when I was a PhD student, I also imitated some of these very good examples, role models that were there. Now, all that should be, so this event, whereas Professor Noe is receiving this accolade and this, we are here to congratulate her on her book, then again, please, Professor Noe, help us mentor these young people, the young ladies just stood up, who are part of this, and the others are in the room. Now, one small story, and that will be the end of that part. Now, when I was, I think at that point, I was still a PhD student, and I had a friend, and we were staying at the same dormitory. And this friend of mine said, "But what do you do at the law faculty?" He said, I've graduated, but I am working for Professor Peter. What do you mean you're working for him? He said, he's giving me a salary, a stipend of some kind, and he's paying for my, I think, accommodation or something. And then I'm helping him to sometime do literature, to look for literature. So in actual thing, many years later, I came to understand Professor Peter was mentoring this person, and he ended up finding a PhD slot for him. And I think he went to do his PhD in Germany. And so Professor Noel, mentor young people, take good care of them, and look, these nice universities that are here, Copenhagen Business School, University, Barcelona, help them secure positions. This is how University of Dar es Salaam is going to go from generation to generation in greatness. Having said that, now I wanted to say something about what we also do regarding that. Now, in the last 2 weeks, Honorable Minister of Education, Science and Technology, Professor Adolf Mkenda, launched a 50 million Tanzania shilling prize for the best papers, the best researched papers that come out from our academic society in the country. So a professor or a senior lecturer, whoever who manages to write a good publication in well-ranked journals would receive 50 million Tanzania shillings. Now this, hopefully, I'm just hoping, Professor, Vice Chancellor, that University of Dar es Salaam is going to be perhaps the best, the one that gets the first. This is the first round that this ministry prize is coming out, and I hope we're going to see University of Dar es Salaam. Now, a good paper has what is called a very good citation. The citation index, I happen to have colleagues who got over 1,000 citations from just being a co-author of one Nature paper. Now, Professor Rutinwa and the other University of Dar es Salaam leaders that are here, I wish before I retire to see University of Dar es Salaam come up in ranking once again. My heart really is in pain whenever I go to Kenya and I look at, or whenever I go to Kampala and look at that small university, Makerere, and I see these people are beating us in the ranking. So please, if we can do a concerted effort, I'm not sure how much more can be done with this Danida project, but I think we need more citation from University of Dar es Salaam professors and researchers, and we need to bring up a little bit the profile of the University of Dar es Salaam. My final gratitude goes to Danida. I don't know whoever is here who can, is there any representative from Danida? No, if he's there, you forgot to invite them. Please convey ministry gratitude to Danida for funding this project, and please invite them to fund some more other projects. Now, having a background in what is called molecular biotechnology, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about the title of this book, Contested Sustainability, the Political Ecology of Conservation and Development in Tanzania. So please allow me to just read through the speech, having said what I had really wanted to add. The Vice Chancellor, Acting Vice Chancellor, University of Dar es Salaam, invited guests. The book volume that we are celebrating today is a Tanzanian affair. I'm very happy that it is not only a part of an international collaboration that spans 3 continents, but also by far the majority of the research team came from Tanzania, and we've been told the research locations, Rufiji, etc., etc. So it's our hope that the findings also are going to be useful. The Vice Chancellor outlined, I think, 3 or 4 outputs, including policy briefs and the others. So I'm happy that this is also going to be of benefit to Tanzania. I'm particularly glad that we can celebrate this book's arrival at this university, which is the cradle of formal academic activity in this country for many, many years. I've taken a lot of time to talk about that. The university has an intellectual community which has fostered this book and others which are there, which will in the presence of a broad group of writers, thinkers, public intellectuals who will discuss it and reflect its findings and implications. I see that there is discussants that have been prepared, And I have a lot of faith, as I said before, to Professor Peter, not only as a role model and a mentor, but also as a critic. I'm informed that the project named New Conservation Partnerships for Sustainability, or NEPSAS, which resulted into this book, was initiated in 2 different meetings here in Tanzania. The first was a side meeting of an international research group gathering about the green economy in Global South, which was held at the University of Dodoma in 2014. Somebody from University of Dodoma was introduced. Where are you still? Oh, good to see you, sir. Please convey our gratitude to our greetings. Oh, there. Oh, Professor, you are there. I recognize you are Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Winiesta. Please. Yeah, kudos to University of Dodoma. And the idea was to collaborate. The idea to the collaboration was taken further to the second meeting in Dar es Salaam when the actual text was proposed. Its questions and structures were also confirmed, and project meetings and the writing workshops which produced this book were facilitated by Danida through Copenhagen Business School and the University of Dar es Salaam. Now, the professor from Copenhagen Business School, are you still here? Yes. Yes. Now, oh, yes, sir, I recognize you. Now, this kind of collaboration, please forgive me because I'm really interested in the ranking. Now, this kind of collaboration should be on the website so that when somebody Googles Copenhagen Business School, also University of Dar es Salaam comes up so that we can actually raise. Yeah, so thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this this relationship. We are grateful for the support of the funders which made that possible. What makes me happier is that this is a Tanzanian book focused on Tanzania, and it's entirely about natural resources sector in Tanzania. I'm also informed that the research which produced this book supported 3 PhD students. And these have been introduced. I look at you many, many times because you are the future. And I'm particularly happy that, as you mentioned, you are female. Let me mention something there. In another effort by the ministry to do what we call in the ministry gender mainstreaming, we were not happy to learn that about the ratio of female to male lecturers, starting from tutorial assistants to full professors, is so skewed to the one side that, remember it was December 2021, we had less than 5 full professors who are female in the country, the whole country. That was 2022. It has changed now. We had less than 5. I remember when we presented this data to our leaders, they said, no, Mekosea, let's just go and check again. It was very severe, the gender imbalance. Very severe. Now in the areas like engineering, science, and technology, the last count we did, I think last year, we only have 27% female academic staff in science and technology and engineering. When you mix with social sciences, it comes up a little bit. But still, I'm happy to see this. And jamani, you have seen, there is your role model. Memwangalia jamani. Mona alivovaa lakini kwa. Start from there. Now, personally, I would like to commend the authors once again. As I've said, when this book is finally online, the university, our university's ranking and other features comes up. And not all researchers, when I was full-time academic staff for about 8 years, I happen to know that many projects are funded, but not all of them end up or come to the end with a book and what we are doing here today. So we really want to commend the authors. 2 things, because they were able to collaborate very well with each other. That's really why you have the results. And number 2, because they were interested in Africa and Tanzania, and the study areas were in Africa. Now, these authors spend their time listening and talking to the people around the protected areas for wildlife, forest, and fisheries resources. And their whole approach, which hinged on effective comparison, was vested in such strong empirical research. I was talking to one of the authors before coming to this room, and I asked him what would be the really output, of what use would this book be. And what he told me, I have to tell you, is that the methodology, the approaches that were used, the way of handling data, processing data, collecting data, this is something that our other researchers can learn from that, even if they are doing other topics, doing other things. So I want to really congratulate them on that. Yeah, please, a round of applause. I'm also pleased that one of the 3 or 4 things that Vice Chancellor mentioned is outputs were policy briefs, and they have sought to develop policy briefs relevant to findings from their work. And these policy briefs, to be honest, are meant to be presented to people like us in Dodoma, in Swahili. I don't know what you're going to be doing. You need to translate them and find a forum, government officials like us, and then come and so that we can actually make use of whatever. If they were targeted to the Ministry of Education, I would have invited you just here and now. But then if they are targeted towards the Ministry of Natural Resources, then it's for the other group to take it up. I'm therefore pleased that this book is accompanied by a series of outputs, including the policy briefs and the others. And we need, there was just the other day, there was somebody saying among the most gifted countries in natural resources is Tanzania. So maybe Tanzanian academicians can also start helping the government also to how we can make good use of these resources. Furthermore, it's not merely an edited collection. You'll find reports from several overlapping teams which have all contributed to each other's work. This is more of a curated collection. I'm sure the academicians will know. The book is also an experiment in publishing an experiment in publishing and also academic conviviality, academic, friendliness and things. I'm proud that such a groundbreaking and insightful piece is launched here today, and I'm also honored and privileged that I've been the one to officiate in this launching. With these few remarks, I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to say that the book launch can now be done in whichever manner. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, the guest of honor, for that inspiring speech. And now, the manner in which we are going to launch the book will be led by our creative arts specialist here. Please. And Prof, the guest of honor, we are, with your permission, in the spirit of promoting the readership of books, in the spirit of promoting readership, we would like you to lead us. We want to organize a rotary here. You'll pick one piece of paper, which of course has been picked by other colleagues in here, and the paper you pick, whoever has that number will get a book from the guest of honor. Now let's see who is destined to the book. Number 18. Who has number 18? Whoever has number 18, please come over and take your book. So we have another one. Number 4. Who has number 4? Oh, it's only ladies. Where are the gentlemen? It is in the spirit of gender. I suppose if we were to do one more, maybe a man would also come up. Thank you very much. Oh, then we need to look into that. The guests of honor, we thank you so much for actually the service you have done to this particular book launch. Now, as you take your seat, I want to invite Professor Chris Noe. I've been advised that the guest of honor might be leaving us before we proceed with other programs. So I want to invite Professor Chris Noe to give the vote of thanks, and then we take a group picture, and then we come to the overview and the presentation as he leaves. Karibu sana.
Asante sana, asante sana. Guest of honor, Director of Higher Education, Dr. Ken Hosea, the Acting Vice Chancellor, Professor Rutino, the Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor Research, Professor Nelson Boniface, principals, deans, and directors who are here, professors and colleagues from within the University of Dar es Salaam, our book discussants, the media crew, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you all for joining us in this very important event, which I promise will be very engaging and it will be very informative. Guest of honor, we thank you so much for prioritizing this event. We feel so honored that you could spare time for this event, which was perhaps not planned in your time schedule today. On behalf of the NEPSAS research team, I am pleased that we could produce the work that we have just said here, different speeches. And I would like, in addition to the book that we will hand over to you. Also, we have packaged the policy briefs for the office that is responsible for natural resources and tourism. But we would still like you to take this package with you, either for use in your office or as representation of our dissemination efforts to the government. I will therefore request the Vice Chancellor to hand over this package. In the meantime, as the package comes, thank you very much, Professor Rutino. I can assure you that the research team is very pleased to have delivered the message they worked for many years in the field and in analysis tables. And we are very glad that we could hand over that small package. Professor Rutino, I thank you also very much for setting aside time to join in this event. It is an academic event which we usually have very few members to join, but we are very glad. These are many very serious academic staff that we have, and your presence here means a lot. And just booking your office and others in the top management, that we in the College of Social Sciences have organized several of these academic engagement events that we would wish your offices also to be actively involved. This is part of the academic engagements that the university would want to have, as the guest of honor said. I thank you so much also, DVC Research, for your support in terms of finances as well as time. Without that support, we would not be able to have this kind of event. It is such an important support throughout our research project, but also in this process and stage of dissemination. I would like to mention our discussants, Professor Chris Peter Maina, who accepted actually to review the book when we were still writing, and also to write the endorsement of the book, and eventually agreeing to come and be the discussant. Thank you so much, Professor. And Dr. Matthew Book, who has just completed his scholarship in Cambridge as visiting African scholar. He is a lecturer and insisted that I should correct in the writing, since the boss is also here. We wrote senior lecturer, but he is actually a lecturer. He made sure I say that. But a very active colleague. He was our student, so he's our alumni, and he's also here to discuss the book. Thank you so much, Matthew. Professors that I see here, I will not mention all, but please excuse me to mention Professor Kaijage. I am so grateful. Professor Magimbi, I have seen Professor Misana, and many others. Thank you, Professor Inesta, for coming from Dodoma, or you were in a meeting, but you gave importance to this event. And all the professors that I have not mentioned, you give us the reason to be here. Professor Mkangara, Professor Majamba, I'm just remembering Professor Makulilo, everybody who is here. Thank you so much for the support. We have many other professors also from outside. Professor Lisa, thank you for being with us here. So I may not be able to mention all of you, but just know that we are really grateful. Professor Eunice Siaiti Palanjo from Aga Khan University, thank you for joining with your team and the friends. And I could go on and on, but thank you so much, students as well as colleagues. I've seen a number of you, and as I entered here, I said, Even if I had 10 people here, guest of honor, those 10 people are serious academics. So I have more than 10 here, and I am so happy to have them because it takes few people to make changes. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this event. After these words, I will then ask the Vice Chancellor perhaps to be with the guest of honor, or I return the mic to the Master of Ceremony before I make some mistakes here with protocol issues.
Thank you so much, Prof, because you have already made some mistakes. Please, the guest of honor, because of the mistake, we are sorry for the mistake that Professor Noe has made. We want to have some group photo with your permission. So we'll have like 3 or 4, just few of them. The first one will be the high table itself. And we want to have the second one with the high table discussants and contributors of the book. The discussants and the contributors. Can you come forward? The discussants and contributors. I know the high table you have done already. The discussant and the contributors. Can you line up behind the high table, please? After that, we shall have the next photo with the high table. We want to have deans and directors in here, attendant here. Deans and directors, please, can you join us? The deans and directors in the university. Dr. Aman, please. Yes, deans, and when I mention deans, I also means principals. Yeah, we just changed not long ago, isn't it? It used to be faculties, and in the faculties we had deans, isn't it? So please, the principals, wherever you are. And then the next one will be all the professors, whether you are from the University of Dar es Salaam or outside this university, as long as you are a professor, please. All professors. And if you are too many, we'll divide into 2 groups, which shows that we are making some progress. Guest of honor, you can see the professors, the number of professors are increasing. So maybe you can have 2 groups of the professors. We can have 2 groups, right? So one should stop where? This one. Great. And the last one, the last photo will be for the organizing committee. The organizing committee, wherever you are, run. This can be postponed if you are taking too long. Organizing team, please. And I think I belong there. Thank you so much. And we thank you again, our guest of honor. Now you are ready to go. Thank you. So, colleagues, now the session begins. That was just political activity, isn't it? The academics now kicks on. And I want to call upon the book discussant to come in front here. Yes, just come, the two of you. And for the interest of time, I want to invite Dr. Matthew Buki to give us his submission as far as the book is concerned. Dr. Buki, you have about 5 minutes. Karibu. We can negotiate later.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be one of the discussants for this book, but also it's a privilege to be speaking before Professor Maina, one of the very distinguished professors in Tanzania, but also in the world. So, asante sana for this opportunity. But also, it's also a privilege to be discussing this book because the editors of the book, one of them is my university teacher, Professor Noe. Professor Brockington is my PhD supervisor, and Professor Ponte has been a collaborator and colleague for over the last 10 plus years. So I have structured my discussion into sort of 4 parts. The first part, I'm just going to sort of provide an overall goal and the contribution of the book. And then the second part, I'm going to discuss some strength that comes from the book in the context of 2 aspects, research ethics, but also research practice, and the empirical data that are coming from the book. And then the third part is going to sort of discuss some of the questions that that come from the book, but also some of the questions that have not been covered by the book. So sort of providing a critical reflection on the book. And then lastly, I'm just going to offer a final remark of what I think about the book. So overall, I think the book empirically it illustrates whether dynamics and complexity in both institutions, but also networks of actors in sustainability partnerships could result to positive environmental outcomes and improved livelihoods in the 3 sectors that have been mentioned, forestry, wildlife, and coastal resources in Tanzania. In the book, case studies came from the 3 districts that have been mentioned, Rufiji, Kilwa, and Mtwara, in southern eastern parts of Tanzania. And what I think one of the key contributions that this book has overall when it comes to scientific contribution is that it brings quite important insights to political ecology as a subdiscipline of geography, but also subdiscipline of human-environmental interactions in terms of struggles over the control, but also struggles over access of wildlife resources, forest resources, and coastal resources. So for that matter, it's quite an important contribution in understanding how these struggles over control, and struggles of access of these resources are quite important in defining how such resources are governed and how such resources are used. But also it questions the standard indicators of sustainability, which most of the cases has been in terms of the outputs that we see, in terms of the land areas that have been increasing, in terms of wildlife population that have been recouping and all that. So it questions such indicators of sustainability because it calls for attention to how and what kind of people and groups gain what is coming from what is sustained. So for that matter, it puts people into very important position when it comes to thinking about sustainability, which has also been quite an important contribution for the book. And in terms of the strength, as I pointed out, I have divided my discussion of the strength into two parts. So the first part covers research ethics and practices, and then the second part covers the empirics or the empirical data. So for the first part on research ethics and practice, for some of you who maybe you are not quite familiar with conservation development literature in Tanzania, but the literature has been very much dominated by foreign researchers. So most of the authors and writers when it comes to conservation development issues in Tanzania have been foreign researchers for over the last 30 plus years. But what this book demonstrates, it's quite important to learn because the book is a good demonstration of an eco and ethical research collaborations between the North and Southern researchers. As you have heard, the research involved researchers from University of Dar es Salaam, but also from Copenhagen University in Denmark. So for that matter, the book has 11 chapters, but 5 of the 11 chapters have Tanzanians as the first authors. I think this is quite an incredible sort of something that we need to clap for because, as I've said, much of the research has been dominated by foreign researchers. So to have a book that 5 chapters out of 11 having Tanzanians as the first authors, that is something that the book has to be praised for. But also all the chapters, all the 11 chapters, has at least one Tanzanian author. So this is something that I wanted to point out because, as I've said, research has been very much dominated by foreign researchers, which is something that wasn't good. But also in terms of ethics and practice, something that the book has sort of as a strength is in terms of what the guest of honor mentioned, the academic conviviality. And this has been very much pointed out in the book in terms of their collaborative writing. They did some team building. This is something that we can learn for future research projects, but also for future writing projects in terms of how such academic conviviality might help to have such productive outputs as this project and this book demonstrates. But also it's also in terms of the rigor in methodology, in terms of how they have the book sort of was built upon multidisciplinarity, but also interdisciplinarity in terms of different disciplines and perspectives, both in theoretical perspectives, but also in methodology. As the book shows, they use quite a diverse of mixed methods, qualitative, quantitative, but also quite a special methods in terms of remote sense data, which I think is quite important, especially when we think of understanding how the governance of human environmental interactions are supposed to be studied. This is something also, it's quite one of the very important strengths that the book has. In the second part of the strength, in terms of the empirical data, the book has shown quite, first it has sort of demonstrated the importance of place-based and contextual empirical data. And this is very important to point out because much of the discussion has also somewhat been dominated by global analysis, in which in most of the cases usually tend to miss local context. But for this case, what this book demonstrates is in terms of this contextual and place-based empirical data, which are very important because they help to sort of build the global conservation understanding from below. So for that, I really think it's one of the very important strengths. But also the book has raised some critical concerns for conservation development in Tanzania in terms of some of these objectives, policy objectives that have been sort of formulated for the management of forest, wildlife, and coastal resources, because the book demonstrates in terms of lack of substantive improved livelihoods, but also the book demonstrates contradictions between local livelihoods and forest resources. But also the book demonstrates a lack of trust in sustainability partnerships, but also it shows that in terms of improved governance, it's only in forest sector, but the governance is quite worse in coastal resources sector, but also in wildlife sector. But also the book shows general dissatisfaction in wildlife and coastal resources sector. And lastly, the book shows a very critical concern in terms of threat to decentralization initiatives because of the resurging move from the government, where there's a resurging move for decentralization, as natural resources are providing revenue for national development projects. So this is also quite a concerning. To finish up, in terms of some of the critical questions that have come from the book or they have not been covered by the book, is in terms of lack of reflection on the colonial legacies. I think this is also something that has missed in the book, because as much as our conservation policies are still very much rooted in colonial policies and colonial perspectives. But also, the book also has raised quite important concerns with regard to how conservation development projects tend to sort of initiate the alternative income generating activities, because the book has shown that these are failing. So it calls for critical examination of these alternative income generating activities. But also in terms of the lack of trust, as the book has shown, or the presence of mistrust between villagers and government machineries, I think that is quite an important research area that for future research that we can think around in terms of building some multidisciplinary research that could investigate to why this kind of issue is arising. Particularly, I see quite an important aspect with regard to environmental psychology. This is one of the disciplines that can also sort of help to understand why such lack of trust, but also, quite importantly, is in terms of how we as universities, how we train our conservation professionals, because the same professionals, when they work in NGOs, there's no lack of trust. But when they go to the government, there's a lack of trust. So that might also call for such a critical investigation. But also the aspect of lack of substantive livelihood improvements, I think it opens up a box to think around alternative conservation approaches, because if the kind of approaches that have been using for over the last 30 plus years are not leading to substantive improvement in livelihood, and then we need to think about what alternative approaches that could help to achieve that. For the final remark, I think what this book has taught me as a reader in the context of conservation development in Tanzania is that there is quite an urgent need or critical need to rethink even a national debate, to rethink about what kind of conservation is important and relevant for socioeconomic development, but also relevant for livelihood improvement of people who are living adjacent to conservation areas in Tanzania. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Buke. I think for Buke, Buki, which means honey, isn't it? Buki. Okay. For Buki, basically the book has allowed us to open up the black box of conservation, isn't it? The black box. And he's saying there is complexity within conservation, and the complex has been unpacked. But the book speaks beyond conservation. It has lessons on cross-fertilization. What is value for cross-fertilization in the academia, but also decolonization, decolonizing. He was saying they were dominantly Western, the literature and the perspectives. Now the book is coming up to decolonize, and yet there's a lack of reflection of colonial legacy. We are going to look at that in the discussion. Thank you so much. Now, Professor Maina, karibu sana.
Good afternoon. Mr. Moderator, when I was sent this program, and it indicated that I and Matthew will share 10 minutes, I was lost. I thought to be democratic, each one would have 5 minutes. And I didn't think that there would be any room for negotiations for extra time with the moderator. So I thought, what can I say in 5 minutes? I'm very thankful that Matthew has covered the academic of the book, the academics of the book. I thought I should just say a few things about the strength of the book. That's what I will spend the 5 minutes to say about the strength of the book. But before I do that, let me say that every launch of a book in an academic institution like ours is a celebration. We are here to celebrate the efforts of our colleagues. And it is like a birth of a new baby. And our new baby is called Contested Sustainability, the Political Ecology of Conservation and Development in Tanzania. And therefore, I would like first of all to congratulate the 3 editors, Professor Stefano Ponte, Professor Christine Noe, and Dan Brockington, who edited the work. But also the long list of contributors to this work. They deserve special mention. We shouldn't wait to read them. We should be able to read them aloud so that we know who contributed to the book. Why? Because it is these people who were prepared to burn the midnight oil, searching for footnotes, collecting data, and so on. And therefore, allow me to mention them in name so that they are not lost in the big speeches. First, Caleb Gallimore, Lasse Folke Henriksen, Ruth Wairimu John, Kelvin Joseph Kamde, Robert Eliakim Katikiro, Opportuna Kweka, Rasul Ahmed Minja, Asubisie Momfupe. I must say this one with a lot of sadness because the colleague Asu passed on in October 2021, and therefore he couldn't be here to be with us. And this book is actually dedicated to him. There is also Faraja Daniel Namkesa, Mete Fog Owing, Pile Silvano, who is among our new doctoral students. So I would like to say that I want to salute all of them, the editors and the contributors, for a work well done. And I'm saying that with the confidence because, as Professor Noe said, I was given this book in draft form, and I had the opportunity to read it. And my comments, if you get the book, my comments are at the back of the book of what I said about the book when I read it in draft form. So I won't repeat what I said, but it's a strong and a very valuable book. Let me say a few things about the strength of the book. Point number one, I think, and this, not many people will mention this, the publisher. The publisher. A book is valued by the name of the publisher. Who did publish the book? Who volunteered, who went through the evaluation and to say that this book is worth publishing? This book is published by James Carey of United Kingdom. James Carey is not any other publisher. He's a big name in publishing business. And for those who are interested in literature, they must be knowing James Carey. James Carey is in the 1960s, is the one, together with Chinua Achebe, who established the African Writers series, which all of us have read. And we got big names in Africa because of James Carey and Chinua Achebe. And I took effort to look at a book by James Carey. The book, Africa Writes Back, written in 2008. And you can see people who are discovered by James Carey. Chinua Achebe himself, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and others. So when you are published by James Carey, you have written a book. That's important, you've written a book. So I think it is a book accepted by James Carey is worth looking at. And therefore I want to congratulate the editors and the writers for actually gaining the confidence of a publisher of the caliber of James Carey. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is what has been said by the guest of honor and the others, the interdisciplinary nature of the work itself. Now, this is a work of participants from different disciplines. People who are in conservation, people are in geography, people are in geoinformation science, people who are in agriculture, economics, and business, people are in political science and public administration, people who are in international development studies, people who are in international political economy, etc. This is a rich academic mixture that has led those involved. They were afraid of calling themselves interdisciplinary, and they coined a word which the guest of honor also mentioned, that their collaboration is not interdisciplinary collaboration, but rather a curated collaboration. And that indicates the nature of this work. And I congratulate them for bringing these people. You know, people in academics are very proud of their small cocoons. When you have your small cocoon of geographers, you don't want to hear about lawyers, you don't want to hear about others. But these people have come out of the cocoons and they collaborated, and that's an excellent example for all of us to know that knowledge is shared, and if you work together, you get further through collaboration. The third point I want to make is, which has also been mentioned before, is the mixture of levels of academics involved. The mixture of levels of academic involved. It is interesting to note that the academics involved in the work are at different levels of their careers. But notwithstanding this difference in their careers, they were able to work together so smoothly. And therefore, in this mixture you find professors, you find assistant professors, you find associate professors, you find senior lecturers, you find lecturers, assistant lecturers, and so on. And yet, they were able to collaborate without people raising the shoulders that I am professor, I cannot work with an assistant lecturer and so on. No, no, no. They were able to work together, and that is something we can learn. And therefore, the work that the research, the conferences, the writings of this book became what I can call a mentoring facility. It's a mentoring facility, a facility to mentor the younger generation. The younger generation who are coming up, they were able, so that I can work so closely with the professor and so on, and therefore you look forward to becoming a professor soon. So I want to actually congratulate them for being able to work so closely. But also, let me say that in this book, we are dealing with a very strong team, very formidable team. 2 years ago, we were in this very auditorium launching another book by the same people. I was trying to match the names in the two books because we wrote a review of the other book. So I was trying to look at the names and so on. It's the same people. And therefore, I think you are giving a good example to the university that people can work. If 2 years ago we are launching in this very room, and today we are doing it, how many came in between us? How many? Can we count? I won't be surprised to be told that there was no other lounge in this room before they came back. So I think this is something we have to copy from. If these people, 2001 launched in November, launched a book here. Today they are launching another book. This is a model we could copy, and we should take it very seriously. See, so as I talked about the time, I will finish just now. So I want to congratulate the team, and I don't want to hear about retirement. You should be preparing for the next book, not to talk about retirement. You leave retirement to us, and you continue. You should soldier on. But let me say, I wanted to say this when the acting vice chancellor was here, that this launch should be a wake-up call to the university. We shouldn't be talking of James Curry, Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press. What about Dar es Salaam University Press? I heard about it. It's starting again. I want maybe the next book to be from Dar es Salaam University Press, and also that book from the Dar es Salaam University Press should be available in University of Dar es Salaam bookshop. Not a private bookshop, University of Dar es Salaam bookshop. These are things which identify a university. It's not only professors. Where do you publish? Where do you sell your books? So that you can tell your students, go to the bookshop and buy my book. And this is important. If you cannot tell your students you have a reading list, there's nothing from you there, and there's no bookshop where to buy it, that's not proper for the university. The university should have its own publishing press, its own bookshop, and that should be the priority of the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. I can see the talks here are taking us towards repositioning the university. Prof, the DUP director is here. So next year or the next publication, the next book will come from them. From Prof Maina, I think a couple of takeaways. I like the concept of a mentoring facility. And I wanted to add, probably a facility sounds quite little. Maybe a mentoring infrastructure. We can debate. I think the book, or the process toward producing the book, was a mentoring infrastructure. And we can see the outcomes and outputs up here. So, I thank you so much. I'm sure we'll come back to some of the issues you raised during the discussion. But for now, can we give them a round of applause? And then, for the interest of time, let me allow the contributors, no, not the contributors, now the editors, to share with us an overview of the book. And because this show is theirs, they were given 20 minutes, but I think they can use 10 minutes. After all, they know the stuff. Karibu-san.
Asante sana, and thank you all for staying. I know time has gone, but I'll go very fast as proposed, just to let you know first the background which brought this book to its current shape. The project has been said many times, the new Partnerships for Sustainability, which started in 2016 and ended last year. It was a donor-funded, Danida-funded project with collaboration with Copenhagen Business School and us, but we had other partners, University of Sheffield, Roskilde, and Lafayette in the US. But the multidisciplinary team of 14 researchers was involved in this project. 8 of these 14 researchers were University of Dar es Salaam staff, and the rest came from our partners. And as it has already been said, political scientists, geographers, development studies experts, and many other sub-disciplines of these major disciplines were in the team to do the level of analysis that we are proud to say that contributes, methodological contribution of the book is very strong. That is in addition to producing 3 PhDs in the areas of natural resource that are seen here. We will have a privilege to listen to 3 of the PhDs as part of what we are really proud to have as capacity building. Just quickly about these partnerships, as I know most of our research is also depending on teams, and I can tell that here there are also teams that are continuing with research. What we have learned that through the partnership that we as a team had, we managed to study conservation partnerships and came up with all the results that we are happy to share today. But the lessons that we want to also share with you about this partnership is the way we set the research agenda. It was very collaborative. It began with no clue where we are going to submit the funding application to. And it happened here in Tanzania from another conference organized by Matthew Buki and colleagues in Dodoma. So it's a locally grown research agenda, which called also for ways to build capacity of researchers here. But in the end, actually, we realized we also built capacity for Copenhagen Business School. I saw on Twitter today somebody saying our capacity has been built. So we are very happy that when collaboration is thought through the way we did, we are very confident to say there's a lot of capacity building that happens, and the results are very useful because the agenda is integrated with the local context. We managed to do co-authorship, which is part of the capacity building that we seek, and also, as you know, competition for good publications in the international journals is not an easy issue. So these co-publications have helped us also jump into those kind of journals that our colleagues here and in the north have already had their names. So even us juniors and middle and top, we all have the chance now to attempt our own publications. A lot of institutional support, both in Copenhagen and here, but we did stakeholders meetings, workshops with the government officials, but also villagers. And as you heard from what we told the guests of honor, the policy influence is something we really wanted to achieve, and we hope the briefs will be useful for the ministry. So why did we do this research? Is because we thought that over the past 3 decades, a lot of partnerships had emerged to support conservation. This means that there were more actors in conservation than previously, and we weren't sure if the increase of partnerships meant also the increase of protection to natural resources, but also improved livelihood for people who are bordering major protected areas. Also, we weren't sure if when there are fewer actors, then there are results that are different from when the actors are many. So we looked at the complexity of partnerships in terms of their institutional settings and also their networks and their density and what all those meant to the outcomes, sustainability outcomes, which were both ecological and livelihood outcomes. So our research questions were around the context, how partnerships are formed, the configuration of these partnerships, but also on processes, what governance structures exist in those partnerships and in different natural resource sectors, but how do actors also acquire legitimacy? How do they make their projects and interventions also be acceptable to the local communities, the government, and other actors, and so on? But what outcomes now have been on the environment and the livelihood? The design, as I have mentioned already, we looked at complexity. More complex partnerships would mean those that have a large number of actors, but also those that have categories of actors that exceed others, and also the mode of access to resources, and so on. The simpler partnerships are those with fewer partners, and simpler in the sense that the structure, the governance structure, is also not as complicated. So the third category is that of no partnership. So these became our control sites. No partnership are sites that have natural resources, have forests, wildlife, and coastal resources, but there's no formally established partnership between the government and other conservation supporters with the local communities. So there's no formal agreement, but people live with wildlife, they live with forests and the ocean just in their neighborhood. So we looked at these categories and to determine whether when it is complex, what kind of sustainability outcomes, when it is simpler, when there's no partnership, what kind of sustainability outcomes. We did a lot of data collection in Rufiji, Kilwa, and also Mtwara Vijijini. Of course, for 2 years, but a lot also of secondary data from government documents, our key informants with a lot of strong voices from the villages. And we did also survey and remote sensing, which helped us to do a lot of comparisons of these data. We still have a huge database which we can still continue publishing and also sharing with other colleagues who are running or are doing the same or more or less the same kind of projects. This was just to say we also had a lot of meetings in the field and in our offices for data analysis and so on. But I would like to invite Stefano now to say what all this data that we did, we collected, formed the publications and particularly this book that we are talking about today. Karibu, Prof.
Asante sana, Christine. I know you've been here for a long time in this room, so I'm going to keep it short because I want you to keep the energy that you have left for the wonderful younger scholars that are coming after me. And they're going to do a bit more into detail on the contents of the sectoral part of the book. I will just give you a brief overview. First of all, it's open access. It means you Google it up, Google the title, it takes you to the publisher page. It asks you to pay, don't. Scroll down and it says open access. You click on that, the PDF comes into your desktop, okay? So it's as easy as that. It takes, even, actually the connection on my phone here is better than in Denmark, so it's actually faster here, so it's really easy. Now, I just wanted to say two things. One is that we started as colleagues in this project, and I think we ended up as a group of friends. And I think that is the best thing that I take away from this book. And I see Rasul nodding here, and Robert as well, and everyone else. And I can say, I've written a number of books. This is the book that I'm most proud of. There is a lot of humanity in this book. If you want to know how much it meant to us, read the preface. So before the first chapter where we say what we did, you get a sense of the group that was behind this and what we endured, but also what we learned from each other. So anyway, so what you find in there, there's a first part that is about issues, backgrounds, and methods, and you can see there's a lot of authors there because, I mean, we were part of the same project, and at some point, we were doing, all of us, most things, and some chapters are divided up, but I mean the first few chapters, especially the historical one and the methodology one, you have most authors and contributors there. The second part is the sectoral analysis. I won't say anything here because our three colleagues will come in a moment and tell you what we did there. What I want to spend 2 minutes really telling you is about the broad stroke, big kind of findings that we have had in terms of the comparative analysis, okay? And I will focus here with you on legitimacy, on environmental impacts, and briefly on livelihood impacts and what it means for these sustainability partnerships that we have. So what we found is that sustainability partnerships that Christine has told you about have struggled to gain and maintain legitimacy. What it means is that the local communities don't see it as they don't accept it as an authority where they can tell them what to do in terms of conservation and what they can get out of those activities. So they're not very happy with it, and they understand that the rules are sometimes fair, but they also have a problem in accepting that that is all that there is, that there is conservation without livelihood improvement, which is one of our main findings. And so what they complain about, both at the community level and individual level that we found from the survey, is that there is a lack of material incentive. Okay, that we set land aside or that we are trying to preserve fisheries, but what am I going to put on the table tomorrow, right? There has to be something that makes up for the fact that I have a more difficult access to a natural resource that I used to have access to. And so livelihoods have been affected by these restrictions. And in many of these partnerships, what you have is the idea of having alternative livelihood projects. If an alternative livelihood is not already present in an area, there is probably a good reason. And if it comes as a project as opposed to something broader, like an infrastructure improvement, then chances are that it's not going to work. In most of the partnerships that we've seen, they go for a little bit and then they peter out, because anything that is project-based is very difficult to maintain in the long term. So when it comes to environmental impacts, actually we found that there is a positive link between complexity, as Professor Noe explained, and environmental outcomes when it comes to forest cover. So there is a positive effect there, but not in other resources. And this is data that we got from remote sensing data. If you look at the survey, people don't think that there has been an improvement. And that has also to do with the fact that they don't think that these partnerships are working for them, and therefore maybe think that also there is no environmental impact. So in terms of livelihoods, a corollary of what I just said is that also because in many of these areas, maybe with the exception of the fishing communities, farming is still the mainstay of the rural community. And therefore, any conservation activity that does not improve access to income that comes from farming or does not facilitate farming is bound to have a limited impact on people's livelihoods. So essentially, things are not getting better in these locations when you look at their livelihoods. So what does it mean for cultivating partnerships in the future? There are 3 points that we wanted to make here. One is that it seems to us that instead of true decentralization, we have a movement of obligations towards communities that are not matched by the resources that are needed in order to meet those obligations. So you give a job without a resource. Well, those of you who are in university management, you know what I mean here. It happens very often at the middle management. You get a lot of stuff to do and no resources. You know what it means. Similar here. And yes, true enough that sustainability partnerships are good at training people and raising awareness on conservation. That absolutely is happening. So people are more aware of the environmental damage that can arise from a variety of practices that are not sustainable. However, as we said, they're not very good at facilitating alternative livelihood activities. Therefore, we see limited effect on socioeconomic outcomes. Some of them are okay at the community level, especially in forestry, but not at the individual level. So this is the very, very short summary of the book. If you're interested in any of these aspects, again, download the PDF and dig in and write us an email if you have questions, or you're welcome also to discuss it with us in the Q&A session. At this point, I'm just going to disappear from here, and I would like to have the first of the 3 presentations on the 3 sectoral elements of the book. So Dr. Ruth John, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Ponte. I know you are going to make a mistake. Before Ruthie, please, 1 minute. There's one participant here. I don't know where he comes from, but he insists of saying a word which is critical to what Professor Noe and Ponte were saying. Please, Karib, for a minute or 2.
Yeah, good afternoon. Oh, no, it's no longer afternoon, actually. It's already evening. Yeah, professors, all faculty members who are present here, but in particular, my sister, Professor Christine Noe, who is editor and a project coordinator of an event that we are attending here. My name is Amos Nko, working with Tanzania Tourism Board. And actually, I'm glad to be here this evening. That Honorable Minister for Natural Resources and Tourism, Honorable Mohamed Mchengerwa, was to be with you for this very critical event. But unfortunately, due to other competing engagement, he was not able to join you. And actually, when I was called to come and listen, actually, and that show the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism is very much honored to be part of those who were invited to participate in this an event that was to launch a book entitled Contested Sustainability, the Political Ecology of Conservation and Development in Tanzania. I'm told the book is the product of the project named New Conservation Partnership for Sustainability. And the book has addressed the most three critical areas in natural resources, and it has been mentioned here about the wildlife, forests, and fisheries. But the ministry is very much responsible and concerned, and actually has interest on wildlife and forest. And actually these are the critical resources the ministry is putting effort to ensure is properly conserved. And we know very clear, had no time to pass through the materials in the book, but if you heard all what has been said here by all the participants and even the guest of honor, when I came here, he was finishing to launch, is that the material inside it is real useful to every one of us. And therefore, we think this kind of effort, talking about the conservation, to us at the ministry is very critical. You see and you know that the government has been given the target actually through the ruling party manifesto 2025 to ensure it attained to 5 million tourists, but also attained to an income of 6 billion USD coming 2025. And without having properly conservations of these natural resources, that will not happen. And therefore, the signage and the partnership that we are talking about here is very critical. You have mentioned about the local communities, the private sectors, civil society, how all this could be placed together to ensure this kind of natural resources is well maintained. I know you have pointed out that this partnership for sustainability has not been real focused, but hoping that having these materials from this book is a good lesson now that something has to be done so that we better go in a way that we achieve what we intended. And therefore, in concluding, let me again sincerely appreciate and thanks the participants for inviting the ministry, and for sure, whatever efforts we are supposed to take as a ministry to ensure this kind of dialogue regarding conservations proceed, we will be together. Thank you very much and be blessed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I know where he comes from. And he had a great message for us. And because he ended talking about wildlife, please, Daktari, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth, lecturer at the Open University of Tanzania. In this project, I was a PhD student supervised by Professor Christine Noy and Danny Brockington. I was a member in the wildlife package, which we had 3 sectors, as the map is showing. This is the map of the wildlife site. We did a research on 3 sites. The first one was WMAs, Juhi Wangumwa and Mungata. All these WMA are recorded in Rufiji district. And then we did a research in Simpler Partnership. This is in Kilwa district, where we studied 2 villages. These are Kandawale and Ngarambi. But unfortunately, this WMA did not pick up because of lack of funds and the border conflict, which the government and the agencies who were responsible for supporting the WMA to take off failed to solve the border conflict, and the WMA did not take off. And our site, other site is control site, which are open areas. This is in Rufiji district. We studied 2 villages in Rufiji district, which are not located in WMA, but they are within the same Serus ecosystem. Our main key findings are these: general rise of livelihood insecurity due to reduced access to wildlife resources. Because of reduction of access to wildlife resources by local communities, and the government decided to ban the resident hunting in 2015 because of different reasons, local communities have failed to access the game meat. And the other point which we raised is the politics. The politics has increased in tourism business partnership, and this is because of bad contract between the local community and the tourism investors who enter into contractual agreement with the local community to conduct business in the village land. But because of bad contract and the lack of transparency in the system, we found out that local communities fails to get the benefit from tourism business partnership. And there is also violence between game reserve authorities and the local communities, also due to reduction of access to wildlife resources. For example, we had a focus group discussion with the villagers at Mloka village, where the youth told us that they don't have access to fishing activities at Rufiji River, and also because the resident hunting was banned, local communities have no any specific way to access the wildlife, and there is a lot of crop damages by wild animals, while the compensation from the government is not clear. The consolation given to the loss of lives, injuries, and crop damage is not enough to compensate for the losses. Therefore, we recommend the following. We recommend the government to revise the policies and the regulation to make sure that the compensation is introduced instead of the consolation, which is not successful at the moment. And also we recommend that the government should solve the conflict of a tourism business partnership, because most of investors, they enter into contractual agreement with local communities, but at the same time, they have their interest. So you find that local communities are not benefiting in this tourism business partnership between them and the different investors. And also we recommend the government to make sure that the benefit sharing mechanism is improved and the local communities are benefiting from tourism business partnership. This is because community lives matter. Thank you for listening. Dr. Piri Silvano.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pili Silvano, a lecturer in the Geography Department here at the University of Dar es Salaam. I was among the PhD candidates who worked under the Forest Work Package, and together with my colleagues, listed here, we wrote a chapter on sustainability partnership in the forestry sector in Kilwa District, Tanzania. Historically, since 1990s, Tanzania has made significant change or reforms in forestry management. And one among these reforms is the changes in forestry management regimes from centralized or state-controlled toward more participatory approaches. And these approaches emphasize more on the role of the local communities and other stakeholders in forestry management. And in Tanzania, we have two types of participatory approaches, which includes joint forest management, where communities enter into agreement with the government in managing forest resources. And the other type is community-based forest management, which is a focus of our study. That's is the type of the forest management which gives the local communities the right to own, to manage, and benefit from their forest. So our study aimed to examine, or our chapter aimed to examine the impact of this sustainability partnership and use the case of community-based forest management in Kilwa districts. So we studied 8 villages of Kilwa district, and we compared villages which are under community-based forest management and the villages which are not under community-based forest management. So we covered 8 villages, including Kikole, Nchakama, Likawage, and Nainokwe. These are villages which are under community-based forest management, but we also covered non-community, non-CBFM villages, which are villages under state-controlled forest management. Our key findings shows that the implementation of CBFM has brought positive outcomes in forest management. And one among these outcomes is improved in forestry conditions. In CBFM, the introduction of forest restrictions, for instance, taxes and fines to rural offenders, and also the implementation of various management activities have reduced the illegal logging and also forestry fires in CBFM villages compared to non-CBFM villages. However, we have found that the increased restriction in forest management in CBFM villages has increased degradation in non-CBFM villages, where the communities manage the forest together with the government. The second findings show that the implementation of CBFM has improved the forest governance in CBFM villages. We found that the increased transparency in information sharings and also increased transparency in information sharings about the meetings and also information sharings about meetings and also, we found the increased transparency about the implementation of CBFM has improved the forestry governance in CBFM villages. In CBFM villages, for instance, actors such as Tanzania Forest Conservation Groups in Jumita have strengthened the village councils and The implementation of CBFM have improved the forest governance in CBFM villages. In CBFM, various actors such as Tanzania Forest Conservation Groups in Jumita have improved and strengthened the village councils. The third findings show that the implementation of CBFM has resulted to the increased, the implementation of CBFM has resulted to positive outcomes on the livelihood and, I'm not feeling some. Sorry. Our findings show that the implementation of let me finish.
You prefer to finish?
Yes. Sorry, I'm not feeling some comfortable, but I will continue. Our finding, I will start presenting the findings from our chapter. The first findings show that the implementation of CBFM have improved the forest condition in CBFM villages. The increased management activities, for instance, the provision of incentives to the local communities, and also the forest restrictions have resulted to positive outcome in the forestry condition. All these have resulted to reduced illegal logging and also forest fire in CBFM. The second findings show that the implementation of CBFM has improved the forest governance in CBFM villages. In the CBFM villages, there are various actors that have been involved in supporting and in providing trainings to local communities and also the village leaders on good governance. We found the increased transparency about meetings, also finance, and also village elections. We found the increased participation of the local communities in meetings, and about 50% of the forest in meetings. Also, over 50% considered forest rules and regulations regarding the use and of the forest resources to be very fair, acceptable, and satisfactory. Over 50% of the respondents in CBFM villages showed that they are very satisfied on their level of involvement in community-based forestry management. The last outcomes, we found that the implementation of this CBFM have resulted to positive outcomes on a livelihood. However, when compared to non-CBFM villages, in CBFM villages, the villages are receiving income from selling the certified timber. And there's, at the community level, we have found that the community-based forest management have benefited high from the certified timber as compared to non-CBFM villages. The villages have retained almost 100% of their revenues they received from timber sale. And these revenues have been used to improve the village infrastructures and services in a community level. However, we found some variation in CBFM villages. For instance, we found that some villages which are found from distant sub-villages have received less benefit from the village infrastructures and services that are located at the village center. Also, over 60% of the respondents claimed that they have benefited economically from conservation education and also trainings provided by different actors that are involved in forest conservation. However, the local benefits, the individual benefits that people received from community-based forest management was very low as compared to the benefits that were observed at the community level. Most of the villagers showed that the benefits they received, they're coming from the involvement in agriculture, especially the sesame crop production rather than other crops or forest-related activities. So based on our findings, the three key findings, we recommend the policy need to be the community level than individual levels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pili. Now, Faraja, we can't wait to discuss, so please.
It's fine. Good evening. My name is Faraja Namkesa. I'm a lecturer from Department of Geography here at the University of Dar es Salaam. I was also a student, PhD student under this project, and I was supervised by Professor Stefano Ponte together with Dr. Opportuna Kweka. I will present the findings of our chapter on behalf of other contributors. And this chapter, we were 5 authors. Okay, so the coastal part that we studied was in Mtwara, and we studied eight villages in Mtwara, in the Mtwara Rural District, and 4 of these villages were those with BMUs, Beach Management Unit, and they are mostly located at the upper side, and the 4 villages were those within the Marine Park, the MREMP, the Mnazi Bay Ruvuma Estuary Marine Park. So these chapters examine the governance structures, that the BMU structures, how do they do the governance activities, the marine park. It also looked on the processes, the whole process of governance from the setting up of the beach management unit as well as the marine park. And also we looked on the outcome. What outcome have been brought about these 2 types of governance structure? So we know that the coastal resources in Tanzania began to receive the significant attention in the past 3 decades when we compare these resources with the other resources such as forestry and the wildlife. And the existing fishery registration that time that existed during the early independence period was not sufficient to catch up with the growth of challenges across the coastal area. For example, the first marine reserve was established in 1970s by the government, but the Marine Parks and Reserves Act came into place in 1994, and the first marine park was established in 1995, which is the Mafia Marine Park. And also the Coastal Beach Management Unit, and another governance structure, was established around from 2000 years. So the key findings, we have several findings from this study or this research, but among them includes the governance challenges. This is related with the structural, financial, and the participatory. So in the beginning of the marine park establishment, most local communities were involved. And for example, in the marine park, they say that they have the village liaison committee, which was responsible to link the community with the marine park officials in terms of involvement in decision making and the implementing other governance activities. But later, the involvement or participation started to decline, and until when we were doing this research, the local communities were complaining of not being involved much, and sometimes they were not involved at all in issues related to management in the marine park. So this also is, it is a challenge in governance. So how can we achieve the goal or the management goal if we start or we don't involve this local community at all levels of decision making or implementing the governance activity issues? In the BMU also, there is a governance structure, governance challenge that is related to structural issues. The BMU is running parallel with the government, local village government council. So there is a collision of responsibilities. And sometimes these people who were responsible in management activities, they face or they have some clashes with the beach management committee as well as the village council committee. So both beach management unit and the marine park officials, they were constrained with inadequate resources, both financial and physical resources. The second outcome or key finding is based on the legitimacy of this tool structure. The research found that both beach management unit and the marine park, the MREMP, were struggling to gain and maintain the legitimacy. And this is because the local community see this structure as not responsive to the existing natural resource problem. They are not accountable to the existing problem or issues, and also they have lost the trust over this institution or this governance structure. And this has been influenced by the unfulfilled promises that they provide during the establishment of these governance initiatives. The third outcome or finding is about the perceived outcomes on both ecological as well as the livelihoods. There was a positive perception on ecological changes. We found that most of the respondents were claiming that there is a positive change on ecology or environment of the coastal, while they were also complaining the deterioration of their livelihood condition. So in one way, the marine park as well as the beach management unit, they have been able to contribute on the ecological condition, the improvement, but they have been failed to contribute on the livelihood or improvement of the livelihood of the local community. So following to this outcome, we provided some recommendation, the policy recommendation, and 3 among those recommendations include reviewing the existing governance structure to ensure that they are fit for the purpose. For example, we have the beach management unit, which run parallel with the village government council. So the BMU operates in one way, they perform other activities, those activities which are also performed by the village government council. So there is a need of reviewing this kind of structure. Also, we recommend information sharing to facilitate a collective, long-term, and inclusive approach. This will include inclusion of actors in planning, designing, implementation, and other related management activities in the management plan. The third recommendation is facilitating support, finance, and the capacity building. In order to have the long-term financial support, for example, in BMU, we found that they were more dependent on NGO to support them for running patrols and other BMU activities. So if the NGO leave, it means that the sustainability of those activities will be impacted. Also, supporting fishers to access boats and gears that are suitable to fish in the deep sea. This is also important because they are not going to fish in the deep sea, and when we are saying the overexploitation of coastal resources, it means that they are fishing the area where they can use those illegal gears. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all the contributors. And I think the richness of the findings can allow us to discuss. Now we are 20 minutes behind the schedule. So can we take a few questions and comments, a few hands, and then you can throw it to whoever you want to direct it. May I take the questions or comments? Yes, I can see one over there. Do you have the mics, moving ones? The other one, the second one is there. So I can see one is Professor Marcel over there. And then I've seen Dr. there. There's another one over there. So can we start with this one, and then if you have another one, we can take the second round. Yes, please, Dr. Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me admit that I have not gone through the book, but I have captured it from their presentations. One thing I'm not yet clear is their choice on a refugee, Kiro and Mtwara. And I'm curious to know if their findings, therefore, can be generalizable to other similar contexts in the country. And if not, are they having any plan for a similar kind of studies in other parts of the country, for example? Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Marcel, can we go to Dr. up there?
Thank you very much. Maybe I should start by congratulating the authors. This is quite a milestone. And as it was mentioned by Professor Maina, that at the university, every launch of the book is a celebration. But I can also add that it's also an opportunity to find an extension to that book, improvement to that book, and how to fill the gaps that have been observed in that particular book. It is on that aspect that when I'm looking at the sectors that you have concentrated, forest, marine, and wildlife, but you are looking at the problems that you're observing in these sectors could come from different factors. For example, when we are talking about the sustainability challenges, not only in Tanzania but in East Africa, one of them is the population growth. And this one is leading to things like overexploitation of natural resources, maybe the growing demand of the agricultural products, etc., etc. So, but it's coming from quite a different sector than those that you have mentioned. So my point is there could be also a linkage to other sectors, like health, for example, which could deal with issues of population control. That's on one side. But on the other side, everything that could boost up sustainability, whether it's partnership, whether it is incentives, we need to have some measures, basically the adaptation measures. And adaptation by itself will require finance and budgeting. And therefore, we are also looking to these other sectors, like Ministry of Finance. I'm saying this in the sense that earlier it was as if this will be used by the Ministry of Natural Resources, blah, blah, blah. But you can also see that there is also a linkage with the other ministries, like Budget, Ministry of Finance. We have the Ministry of Health. And therefore, maybe as we keep on improving on this area of sustainability, we could also explore those other areas. And that's the point I was saying, that maybe the launch of this book is also an opportunity for extension, for looking at the gaps, and to see how we cover the gaps. But generally, I congratulate you, because my understanding of sustainability has been enriched now by looking at the sustainability partnerships. Because earlier we are looking at the sustainability incentives. We have similar approaches, and a number of the research we have done also on the marine protected areas, on the forests, on the wildlife, but we are looking on the angle of incentives rather than the partnerships. And therefore I can see that my sustainability notion has been enriched. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kirama. I think you are calling for a new project here, is it? Thank you so much. And I saw Daktari over there.
I also join hands to congratulate the editors and authors. And my question relates to the three presentations I have heard. It seems like partnership doesn't work, so to say. Could we think of linking this kind of partnership and go back to the polycolonial kind of managing forest and wildlife, where local communities are doing entirely conservation by using their own traditions and customary laws?
Thank you so much for a critical one. Going back to indigenous knowledge of conservation, and assuming that the problem itself is that straightforward and less complex, isn't it? Because if it's complex, then we need to join the efforts. Can we bring the mic here? I've seen Dr. Narman. Narman, we come to you in a minute. The mic is already with Daktari over there. Karib.
My name is Manoko. I come from the College of Agriculture and Food Technology. Now, in my view, there is probably one question that needs to be answered when it comes to conservation. And I'm looking at what is the central, or what is at the center when we speak about conservation in Tanzania? Is it, if we take wildlife or forest, is it wildlife, is it forestry, or the human beings? Study indicates that people who are moved from conservation areas are now poorer than they were before they were moved from the national parks or game reserves or forest reserves. And I got it right when it comes to when you kill a lion, the amount that you pay is more than when an elephant kills a person. So the question again comes, for who are we conserving for? Is it for us or for the hunters and the tourists? The last thing that I want to say, in my view, you cannot conserve without the people. In the few studies that have participated, one was in Kilimanjaro, the areas that are conserved by the people using the indigenous knowledge were more protected than the areas that are managed under the forest reserve, for example. So in my view, we needed to redefine on how conservation is done in Tanzania. In fact, when you look at the data that are available, Tanzania is among the few countries in the world where about 1/3 of the country is conserved. About 1/3. And the way you go higher in the level, the less people are even allowed to enter into conservation areas. In some, for example, the national parks and the nature reserves, for example, even passing is trespassing. And that's why I think probably we need to join hands and find ways of conserving for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manoko. Whose benefit matters in the question of conservation? I think this is a question central to political ecology, right? I see Dr. Narman here. And then we can, we can take another hand, and then we allow the...
I'd like to take this opportunity first for the organizers for inviting me. So I came all the way from Zanzibar, and I'll take the message back back home. Thank you very much. I just want to contribute something very little that you've done a good job, and I'm happy to learn that you have produced 3 policy briefs. Only my recommendation is that it would be good if these policy briefs will be translated in Kiswahili so that even those who don't understand English can learn what you have done. Thank you very much. Just that.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, a champion in community engagement. So we want also the common mwananchi to get the gist of what was found out. And probably not just the language, but also the form itself. Thank you. Karibu, Dr. Ali.
Asante. My name is Delphine Jewele from Department of Creative Arts. Looking at the presentation, first of all, I have to congratulate those participants, and their presentation were good. I have interest in some of the areas of study, like in Mtwara. With that interest is like, in Mtwara we have cultural practices like Jando na Onyago, and they are very attached to nature and conservation. If you don't involve those or pay attention to those practices, it is almost useless, because no rite of passage that is done without a need of fire and the firewood, water, and even wildlife like animals. And to accomplish that, you have to have those things as a part of passage of right. And my question is, did you consider those issues and see how you can use these practice, because you want to stop them? Christianity has failed to stop, even the Islamic have failed to stop them, the faith. They are still continuing. I went through the same process. So you cannot stop them, but how do you involve those cultural practices to make part of the study and conservation of anything that comes to them? Thank you.
Asante sana, Daktari. I think the indigenous knowledge keeps on coming back. Now, can we allow the presenters to respond? Karibu. Can we have the mic? Okay, can come here.
Thank you. I take the freedom to go first. First of all, because I'm not a conservation scholar, and I have a lot of good people here who can answer those questions a lot better than me. But I do know stuff about incentives and partnerships. I came into this project trying to understand legitimacy, incentives, and the way in which complexity was perhaps in the way to achieving better sustainability outcomes. So on the question of on incentives, I'm totally with you. And indeed, one of our major findings is that people, when you ask them, they tell you, yes, conservation is all good. We understand we really understand the value of it, and we understand more and more about it. But if there is no incentive at the household level, it's actually very difficult to continue with these practices. Certain incentives, of course, are given at the community level, and Pili's presentation on CBFM in forestry is a very clear example of those benefits that are coming at the community level. And they have, of course, influence at the household level. But together with the community level, we need to also figure out ways in which individual households will gather benefits from this. And I think it's quite an important point to make, and it overlaps with what you said. Are partnerships the way? If you compare, and you know, I really would like for you, and since this is a free book, do dig into it and do tell us what you find and whether you find that solid or not. But we do have findings that show that these more participatory partnerships actually function better in terms of the environmental outcomes, especially in relation to forestry and mangrove and actually coral impact. We didn't really have time to go into the details. So we're not advocating here a return to a top-down kind of military-style conservation at all. And this, my colleagues will make clear that that is not the case. What we're trying to see and to try to say is that how can we make those more participatory setups work better and be more impactful. We did control for a lot of other factors. The fact that we have actually 3 sectors instead of 1, I think we came a long way. Most studies actually look at 1 sector only, and we chose 3 areas that were relatively contiguous. I know that there are lots of internal differences, but broadly speaking, a broad socioeconomic profile. We did a lot of propensity matching testing, a lot of quite advanced sort of modeling in order to control for a lot of other factors. So I think we're fairly confident with the results that we found for these 3 sectors. Of course, the context is different in different places, and sectors are different, and therefore, yes, there's the usual thing of, yeah, let's go for another project. But let's also learn from where we are and where that, also those methodologies that we have developed, and I say we, but it wasn't really me, it was a lot of our Tanzanian colleagues. We had a fantastic group together with other colleagues from the Global North, in order then to be able to compare really across different projects. I'll leave it at that for now. I don't know, Christine, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much for taking interest to stay until now and for the questions and comments. I take these comments very positively. Now I will quickly talk about the choice of the sites. Professor Masele, we considered that we have, because we wanted to study communities that are bordering major protected areas, and in these 3 zones, 3 resources. So the southern Tanzania had Selous Game Reserve, but the Marine Park and also forest reserves in Kilwa together in the same socio-economic setting. And communities there are also almost doing similar things than comparing those with the northern communities, which are pastoralists. Issues of pastoralists and farmers and fishers are very different, but at least we could find 3 resources within the same socioeconomic setting for comparisons that made our work much easier. If I go quickly to Dr. Ichumbaki's difficult question of delinking partnerships, and truly what the key message that we are saying here is partnerships have worked, but they have not necessarily worked for the local communities. They have worked very well to protect wildlife, for instance. A lot of expansions has been done to protected areas. Also forests and coastal resources are more protected now, but it's protection for, somebody asked Dr. Manoko, I think, for whose interest. This is why we say it's contested, actually. The issue of contestation comes there, that we have sustainability outcomes in terms of ecological impacts being held. If the minister was here, he was, I'm sure, his speech was going to say how much we have achieved in terms of expansion of protected areas. That comes up front, that from this year to this year, we have managed to involve communities, and therefore now we have larger areas of protection than before. But if you go the other side of livelihoods, you realize the communities are complaining a lot because a lot more land is now under protection, and it became under protection through participation, the partnerships that we are talking about. And initially, it wasn't clear for communities that they are participating, but eventually, the natural resources are going to be under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism, and very serious borders are there to deny access to these communities. So access to resources has become more difficult, even though these areas have gone so close to the neighborhoods of communities. So one side is completely not happy about partnerships, and the other side is happy about the partnerships. Now, not to do partnerships or continue doing that is why we say it's contested. Sustainability in this question is for natural resources, for the ecology, but it's not for livelihood. This is what the message we are sending. Now, since we are not conservationists, to delink, we came from fortress conservation, as you know, the hard way of doing conservation where communities and the national park are very separate in terms of their operations. Now, the partnership is meant to make these people work together. Now, the working together has not benefited the community. So it's complicated, it's contested, and the reason we bring in political ecology is because we are questioning the same as Dr. Manoko, for whose benefits is very contested. There are those who are benefiting, tourist investors are benefiting, and so on. Those who are having licenses for forest harvesting are also benefiting. But comparison between what the communities lose in terms of land, in terms of access to resources, and also the means to be business partners is not comparable. So as researchers, we are communicating this, but we cannot say the linking is going to happen because it is actually through partnership that the government is also able to expand. Nowadays, Ichumbaki will agree with me that you don't hear complaints about fence and fines. Why? Because communities are participating, are made actually to participate, and they participate hoping to be beneficiaries. But in the end, they do not benefit, but their land is already protected, and it is under very serious protection. If you go to these villages, it's like a war. Just a few months ago, I was doing another research in Bozi, and I happened to go with a vehicle with 2 tires at the back, and it happened to be green. Exactly the colors and the way the Tanzania Forest Services go into villages to arrest people. I did not find a single person to speak to for some hours because people are hiding. And they saw this car when I was coming from very far, and a piki went to the village to say, hey, 2 tires are coming. This is the language they use. So you can imagine that villagers and forest department are enemies now than before because the forest has come close to the village and villagers have more strict rules for access to resources. So this, for me, I would say, is an area of continued research, and obviously there are many questions that can only be answered through another research project. Those who have just finished would not want to hear another research project starting now, but it's when you finish one project is the beginning of another, which Dr. Kirama, you said very well. So I have addressed Dr. Manoko and Ichumbaki, I hope, and we can continue these discussions later, I'm sure. Thank you, Dr. Jidawi, for reminding us of the Kiswahili version. We will definitely consider that now. I'm looking at these Wazungus and I don't think they are going to help me. So I will take responsibility for that. The indigenous knowledge thing has come up twice from Dr. Njewele and somebody else, I think it's Manoko still. This has been a debate, and it's true that in a small scale, indigenous knowledge can work, but the government wants big results in terms of conservation impacts. They are not talking about a small forest, they want huge area, and they want the area that they can control. But where communities are still entrusted with resources, they have the means of doing that. We didn't quite focus on that, but we have cultural practices, especially in fisheries, where women they are involved directly in protecting certain species, which are very culturally valuable, and they consider them of significant traditional importance. But those are small patches which the partners that we are talking about, they are talking about big expansions. And therefore, these traditional means are for the communities to maintain their own areas. But when it comes to the results that conservation partners want, then these small patches of traditional practices have not been promoted a lot. This is not a comprehensive answer. The rest of the team can also chip in. But thank you very much for the comments and questions.
Yeah, I think the time itself, do we still have the appetite for more questions? I can see the audience, you know. I once taught adult education, so I know how far and how less. So just to conclude, I know we have heard about the vote of thanks, and but there was a question from Professor Maina about DUP, the Dar es Salaam University Press. And I think because we are celebrating a book here, we want to see more books coming up. The director is here. Maybe a word from the director can allow us to make a nice closing. Karibu.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here, and thank you very much, Professor Noe, for an invitation, also the organizing committee. But also, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate all authors and editors for this job well done. Congratulations. But I'm here also to give a very important message that our publishing house, that is Dar es Salaam University Press, is active and in operation. We have taken a number of initiatives, and I want to assure you that our publishing services are keeping on flying. So this is the call to all of you as academicians from the University of Dar es Salaam community and outside. You're welcome to use Dar es Salaam University Press publishing services, and I welcome all kind of manuscripts, academic books, manuscripts, novels, manuscripts, and the like. And I want to assure you we'll give you a professional and effective publishing service. If you have never been to our offices are located near Old Library, the same building with Reddit, but also we have a table in the booth. You can come and see us, we talk, but also you can reach out direct to me if you want to hear more and also you want to use our service. My number is 0755 146 527. 0755 146 527. Thank you very much again for this opportunity.
Thank you. And now, Professor Noe, the last word, we go. And you invite us for something.
For some drinks, yes. Colleagues and friends, thank you so much for staying. Thank you so much for taking interest. I'm really honored and as I said earlier, even if you were just 10, I would take it very seriously. But you are far more than that. Thank you so much for staying. And we have some drinks and other few things to make us stay outside for further networking. I think we still have time, and just in case you don't know, it is heavily raining outside. So we can stay and continue talking as we wait to go. Just one small thing that I didn't want to say this, but I should because it was in the program. We have colleagues who are children book writers, and something official happened as we met the guest of honor, who is from higher education, and we were advised not to continue with that because the ministry is currently doing serious investigations about children books. As you know, there is a lot that is going on now. So because he came to us not to do that kind of job, and there's a committee currently doing the job, he thought that we should postpone that. I thought I should say this to apologize to colleagues, the Richard Mabalas and colleagues. My children are here to just meet Mabala the farmer. At least they will come, they will get to see you. But there's a whole team of children book writers here, and we are sorry, it's beyond our control. Thank you so much again for supporting us. Colleagues, my students who are here, we are already reading this book, and perhaps I will give examinations based on today's. So I have seen you around. Thank you for coming. Basi karibuni tuendelee pale nje. Thank you so much.